You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I am excited to introduce a lively and fun conversation with Allison Parc, the founder of Brenne Whiskey. From professional ballerina to the founder of a whiskey company based in Cognac, France, Allison's journey is truly inspiring. In this interview, she shares the twists and turns of her unique career path, how she transformed her passion into creating an exceptional whiskey brand, and bonus, her impeccable French gentleman impersonation, which will surely leave you laughing. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a glass of Brenne whiskey and enjoy the show. Allison, welcome to Served Up. I'm really excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Bridget. Truly.
Wonderful. I know you have such an interesting story. Can you tell our listeners a bit about your beginnings? Where are you from? What was it like before you entered the whiskey world? And then we'll go from there.
Ooh. Well, I was born in a womb. No, I'm kidding. No, I grew up in Maryland. I live now in New York City, where I've been for 22 years, I think. Oh my goodness. And I came into this world knowing one thing about myself when I was 5 was that I was destined two things, that I was going to live in New York and that I was going to be a professional ballerina. And I got to do those. And when I was 9, I joined the Joffrey Ballet and continued on until 23, joining different companies and performing on some amazing stages, some really interesting stages, and everything kind of in between.
So that's really amazing. My family's background is dance.
Oh.
Both of my aunts own dance studios. The one studio has been around for 60 years. The other one is celebrating its 40th birthday this year. And my whole family is in the business of dance, and many of my cousins and relatives have gone on to dance professionally, whether it's a Rockette or in different companies. And so I feel you, sister, and I know how hard it is. I know how that journey is so fucking hard to become a professional ballerina. Your poor toes, your poor little feet. Are your feet just a wreck?
Thank God, no. But I will say my calf muscles are still enormous. They just won't go down. But I had no idea walking into this interview that you had such a strong connection and your family has generational roots to the performing arts, to the dance specifically. It is such a unique space to have a dream and to take all the sacrifices that it takes to dedicate oneself to that dream, because you're doing all of this work to go into a space that has a very specific time, like you're tapped out because your body can no longer sustain the art form at the level at which it needs to be sustained. And it's a space, unlike professional sports, where there's like no money. so like they all talk about, oh my gosh, these athletes, and they need to make it by a certain time. And then like then they get tapped out in their early 30s. And it's like, cool, same is happening to dancers, but there is really no money there. So to me, I'm like, it shows this very different side of humanity in a human's deep courage and almost like need to take action on a dream. And it's such a specific sacrifice. So I tell everyone, if you ever have a dancer interview for a job, whether or not they know what the job is, just hire them. You will not be sad. They will always rise up.
That is so true. One thing that you said is, comparing it to being an athlete. And it really, it's so true. And I think that dance in general should get the same respect as an athlete because you're putting in the same hours. You're
Yeah.
putting in the same effort, right? My daughter was a competitive dancer. She was in the studio 7 days a week.
Yep.
7 days a week.
Multiple hours at a time.
Multiple hours at a time, but still having to keep up her grades and all this kind of stuff. And so when you're able to take those capabilities, right, and that art form through your strength into a professional arena, it's huge because I know it's like less than 2% of dancers get that opportunity. So the drive in you, Allison, and your grit must be off the charts.
I really do believe that to go from ballet as an American starting a whiskey company based in a foreign country in a language that one doesn't speak, I think that's how that happened. Like, I think the grit is the answer. Like the bullish, the absolute bullish belief in one's ability and one's self and in possibility. If there is possibility, then surely isn't that alone worth the effort? That is like the blueprint from dance, right?
Yeah, totally. And so I want to, go into that, jump that you did, a literal leap that you did from the dance world into the whiskey world. It's not common, okay?
It's not
a common thing that you're doing. And to make whiskey in France ain't common either. So let's talk about that. Allison, just why? What happened? When was that moment and you're like, this is what I need to do, and this is where I'm going to do it?
My gosh.
You took the rough road.
It was the rough road. I agree. Thank you. I honestly, sometimes I look at that beautiful brand and I'm like, oh man, you still have some hurdles, babe. I hope you can have the longevity and hang in there. But it's an extraordinarily beautiful journey. And the idea came out of the sky and into physical form when I first wrote it on a cocktail napkin in like an airport. I think I was in Mumbai or like somewhere in the world going, hey, I have an idea. This is what could be. And then I think with any idea, I've seen some people go, oh my gosh, I have an idea. And then they go. And being in action on a dream takes so much courage and so much stones and just like, hell yeah, right? But then there's another opportunity to go, well, let me do some research and see, has this been done before? Is it to the worldview I have? I don't think it's being done, but maybe that's just because of the worldview I have. So maybe I have to go expand myself and like see what else is being done. So to me, there's an opportunity to do such a big research period kind of around it. And you always want to learn enough that you feel like you get a sense of the space, of the industry, of the history, of the context, of the possibilities, of where the market's going, of what consumers are talking about. And you also don't want to get so much that you scare yourself out of action. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Were you a whiskey drinker already? Were you a cognac drinker? Were you a francophile? Were you just obsessed with France? Because I am.
Yeah.
So how? I mean, like when we're digging deep, I think it's so fun that you put it on a cocktail napkin. How cool is that? I hope you kept that little napkin.
I didn't, sadly, but I wish I had.
I wish you would have, but still, like, just to think about creating something beautiful. And I am a fan of your brand. I am a very big fan, actually. I think that is lovely. And you did it with great integrity and taste. And it's actually delicious.
Thank you.
But when you go back to that moment, like, yeah, I should create a whiskey in France. I mean, first of all, why France and why whiskey?
Yeah, I loved whiskey. I was not a cognac drinker or an Armagnac drinker. I'd really gone from basically a life of caloric restriction, being ballet, right? So food and beverage restriction, into trying to understand alcohol. As a ballerina and being a ballerina well into my early 20s, I missed, in my day, right? It would be like the college drinking era when everyone's binging and like doing all that crazy behavior. But in addition to having a lot of fun and some of them, having some interesting choices, they also got to learn their own levels of alcohol consumption, right? There was like a social learning in that. They learned about cocktails, they learned about drinks, they learned about all these things. And I had just missed that entire social education aspect of it. So when I left dance, and, started going on dates and things like that, and people were like, "Oh, do you want a glass of wine?" I was like, yes. Right. I had to learn very quickly about alcohol. And I found that I really loved whiskey. It was beautiful. It tells a whole story in one glass. You pour it into a rocks glass. You can nurse it for a long time. And, this was the early 2000s. This is when the Cosmopolitan was big because Sex and the City had been rolling, right? People were kind of coming in this country a little bit out of the wine boom and starting to go into cocktails, right? And craft breweries were really kind of happening then. And I was this really unique, weird little oddball ordering a whiskey. It was just not popular in this country at that point in time. But I loved it, and I thought it was delicious. And I started doing research and asking bartenders and reading whatever limited books were out there at the time, and realized that whiskey was really made in this way that felt reminiscent, symbolic, parallel to how wine was made, right? Like if you're paying attention that these are agricultural acts to create something that is grown in the soil and ferment it, and for distilled spirits, for whiskey, it's then distilled and then aged. It's like all of that starts in the soil. And I was really confused why all these people had spent so much effort to market and talk about wine in a very important way of saying, wow, when you close your eyes, if you have been able to train your nose and train your palate enough and you sip and smell something, you could be able to, as an amazing human skill, say, oh, it might come from this side of that mountain in this part of the world, probably grown in this year to that year. Like, that's extraordinary. It's amazing. Yeah. So I was like, well, why are people not talking about whiskey in that way? Can we, could we, should we be having these conversations of terroir in whiskey if we're using barley that's grown around our distilleries and yeast that may be indigenous or natural or something from that area, and then aging it in these particular ways? And why, are we not talking about terroir in whiskey? This was my original question, because most whiskeys at that time were coming from Scotland, Ireland, Canada, and the US. And then in that there was a little bit of nuance in Islay and Speyside and things like that in Scotch. But with what we had kind of seen in the industry at that time, a lot of these distilleries being bought up by some of the bigger houses, barrels were starting to get moved around in terms of Scotland. So were things that were aging in these very particular regions before still getting to maintain the integrity of where they were getting aged and matured, or were they getting consolidated, right? And what was that doing to the flavor? So were we kind of neutralizing these aspects of terroir? And as so, from maybe a production efficacy standpoint, are we also kind of losing a little bit of that artistry and the nuance and the cultural or geographical significance? So this is kind of a lot as a 23-year-old to be asking.
Amazing. So much to be thinking about.
Yeah. And I was like, well, I think this is a conversation that people, I don't ever want to undervalue the intellectual integrity of a consumer by oversimplifying the marketing on something. Let's talk about things that are kind of weird and a little bit bigger and a little bit complex. And maybe the artist's job is to take something that's big and complex and distill it to make it simple to understand. But that doesn't mean to take the message and completely wipe it of any information or make it so neutral that you miss the opportunity for education. And so I was like, I think that there is a way to make a whiskey using terroir in a place that's really interesting and evocative. And when we're Americans and we think of France, and like you, Bridget, I am a Francophile. So when I think of France, I think something that is made in France already starts at a level of luxury, right? And flavor wise, you want to give me a French cheese, a French wine, a French roast chicken any day. My taste buds are grateful. So what if we could make a whiskey coming in with all of that richness? France is a tiny little country geographically, but has so many distinctions of terroir. So what if we could pick a region that has geographical significance, that is established and named as a place because of the microclimate that it has, but also has a distilling history. And Cognac is amazing, right? They've been doing cognacs for 200 plus years. So what if we make a whiskey there? They seem to know how to do distillation and maturation. So
they absolutely do. And, when you go to Cognac, France, to me, it's very untouched.
Yes.
It's not a big city. It's almost like a little storybook area, right? Yeah. And you can meet the farmers there. It's very easy to meet the producers there. It's a community that's, I find, incredibly, incredibly approachable. So with that said, once you have this great idea, and I do think that it's a great idea to distill something in that region, what did you do? What did those steps look like?
Oh my gosh. Well, it took me a minute to kind of zero in on Cognac. It was at first just France. And then I honestly thought, I was like, I never intended to start my own brand. I thought I could start an import company in the US and import single malt whiskeys made in non-traditional countries that were focused on terroir. And I will say some people might label it in their life as an aha moment. I think I call it my oh shit moment. It was like realizing, oh shit, no one is making a whiskey that follows that niche, right? No one's making a whiskey outside of Scotland and Ireland and Canada and the US that is made in a beautiful place, that is focused on terroir, that is not trying to bring peat from Islay Scotch down to wherever they are in the world. They're not trying, like everyone at that time in a blind taste test, if you were making a whiskey outside of Scotland, Ireland, Canada, they were trying to say in a blind taste test, can you tell the difference between what we've made and what another historic heritage brand has made? And when you said no, that was the moment of pride for them, right? They thought that copy was the best ability to show the world that insert name of country had a reason to stand at the table of world whiskey, right? So the creators at that time were like, to show distinction because of where we are, they thought it was bad, right? It was a mark of less than quality. They thought quality was a very similar profile. And I really struggled with that. I felt like that left a lot of room for innovation and an authentic innovation. And I thought it just did consumers a disservice because you're just assuming that what they've had is all they ever want.
Absolutely. And as an entrepreneur going into another country to start a business, like maybe you don't speak the language all that well. I don't know. I call what I can speak, I call kitchen French. So, so like if I worked in a restaurant here in America, maybe with some French folks, I could say a couple of words, but
that's my favorite phrase now. Yeah.
Yes. Little kitchen French. So what the heck did you do? So what was that like for you as an entrepreneur and as a female entrepreneur? Let's not just gloss over that. I'm hoping in my lifetime, I don't know that it'll be in my lifetime, where we don't have to mention our gender, but I do feel right now that we do, especially in the world of whiskey, because you are far and few between. It is very much male dominated. So let's talk about what was that like for you as an entrepreneur, finding a place to distill. What did that look like? Where is it distilled exactly? And what are some learnings that you took away?
Yeah. We have, I had a lot of doors shut in my face. Right. I was like, I had this idea. There was only about 4 or 5 guys in France making whiskey before I arrived. And I went to them and said, hey, what if you make a single malt? So you're already making single malts and you're trying to label them as this and that and whatever. I was like, what if you make a single malt using only local ingredients and you can really say it's a French whiskey first, and then it's a whiskey from this particular region, because the world isn't necessarily going to care about that region until France is established as a whiskey making place. And they were all doing it in reverse. They were all saying, my whiskey from Brenne is very unique and very special and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, cool. The world doesn't know about that. Like, they can't even get their minds around yet that whiskey can be made in France. So I got a lot of doors shut in my face, and some of those guys are so beautiful and have since like hugged me and swooped me up at events. And they're like, it was the biggest mistake of my life to say no to you.
Love it.
I'm like, and I always said thank you to them, because I was like, by you guys saying no to me, it forced me to create my own brand. And I don't think I would have done that, right? I think I would have just tried to be an importer. And I was in the States, and a friend of mine who was editing Whiskey Magazine in France at the time, he had become a friend, and he was like, hey, I was just at this guy's house in Cognac, and he was serving something that he said was whiskey, but it didn't taste like any whiskey that I know. And I'm just going to put you guys on an email, and like, you guys should talk. And it turned out that this guy, I was 24 years old at the time. This distiller was third generation. He was just in the process of taking over his grandfather's Cognac house. And he was 28 years old, and he had just done like 2 semesters in Sonoma in California. And he had this like very like disco, like, yeah, America. Like, he was like, so American. And he was like, oh, I love American. You have like so much fire. Like, let's go. Let's see what we can do together. And so I was like, okay, dude, like, yeah, let's do it. So we started sending samples and stuff back and forth. And I was like, when I say whiskey, what do you mean? Like, what, like, this doesn't taste like anything that I've ever tasted in whiskey. So I flew out there. He took me through the whole process. We're literally standing in his fields. I'm looking at barley being grown and cared for in a completely organic way. He's taking me to the still. He's showing me the fermentation tanks. He's showing me the barrels. And it was just like, oh my God, this guy has already started making a whiskey in the way that I imagined it. Right.
Wow.
It was wow. It was so crazy. I'm like, I'm standing there. I can still smell that barrel room when I close my eyes. And I was like, do you want to be like, can I see your packaging? And he's like, oh no, Allison. And by the way, the whiskey was like 4 years old at the time. Okay. The oldest barrels were 4. They had 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 1-year-old barrels. But it was young. Yeah. And I was like, can I see your packaging? And again, I'm still thinking like an importer. And he was like, no, I don't have any packaging. I actually ate the marketing. It is the worst part of the process. I don't want. And I was like, okay, right. I'm 24 years old. He's 28. Like, we were very young, and I have no college degree in business. I've never taken a business class.
Wow.
Like, everyone else has said no to me so far. So like, how can I help us get to a yes? Like, this feels like the last stop on this train. And I was like, do you want to be business partners? Right. And he goes, no.
Oh, and I love your French accent. It's so good.
It's had lots of experience.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, I got another no. Like, what the hell am I even doing here? Right. And instead, like every other guy, they were all men back then. And whenever they gave me a no, I would kind of go into what I call like performance mode. Like, I gotta like convince them that like I'm a worthy investment, and like they should totally partner with me, and I'm going to make them so much money. I didn't know then that the French have a very different view of what so much money looks like and the effects that so much money can have on their lives. They are not Americans. Americans are very unique in our chase of wealth in a very different way. They chase value of life over wealth. So that was a big learning curve later on down the road that kind of stumbled me a few times. However, anyhow, in that moment, I was like, I can't pull up the same script I've given all these other Frenchmen every time they've given me a no. I have to try a different approach. So he's literally sitting across from me. He's just said no. He does not want to be my business partner. And I thought, all right, Al, like dig deep, ask something else. And I just go, okay, like, what do you want to do? Bridget, thank God I asked that question, because my life changed completely at that time.
Really?
He was like, all he wanted to do was be the farmer and the distiller. And after that, he wanted nothing to do with it. And so we wrote this wild contract together where he got to do that. And he could do that for as long as he ever wanted. And if he ever woke up one day and didn't want to do that, no problem. Like, he just had to help us set the whole thing up on a new distillery. Fine. And then in the meantime, like, I would own everything. I would take on the financial responsibility. I would own the brand. I would own all the whiskey. I would I would create a brand. Like, I would do everything. I would import it. I would distribute it. It was mine. Right. And I didn't know at the time it was effectively kind of like a contract distilling, but it felt so much more intimate than that. It felt like a genuine partnership. Like, I was working with the farmer, and then I would go over all the time for distillation. And then together we would analyze the barrels and think about how they were aging. And it was my idea to start moving some of those 4-year-olds into cognac barrels, which was crazy. Thank God it worked. but yeah, it was really, truly this organic step-by-step process where I had to remove what I thought the performance of what a business person would do. And I had to just keep showing up in my authenticity and relate to him always human to human. And when we could do that, we could make miracles happen.
That is amazing. And I really hope that our listeners are taking some notes, because if we all just approached each other, even every day, human to human, and let a lot of the bullshit go, the things that don't matter, but to find that genuine connection, it would just be better all the way around. So once you found, your person over in Cognac to really start building this brand, like, how did you find the name? You have such a beautiful bottle. I mean, let's go from like, okay, we've got the guy, he's making this stuff, right? What's next?
So what was next was when he signed the contract. I'd flown back to the States, had this really amazing person help us write this contract, put it all into legal terms. And I flew back to Cognac. And at that time, his girlfriend, soon to be wife, she was pregnant and she's making us dinner. We're sitting in his kitchen, right? We're like eating the baguette that I bought at the boulangerie that morning and brought to their house. And he's looking at this contract, and I'm thinking, this is it, Bridget. Like, this is the moment my life could change forever. And he stops and he's like, okay, Allison, I just have one question. And I was like, okay. And I'm like looking at my watch. I don't even think we had smartphones at that time, or they were like first generation. So you didn't want to even touch the button to like charge your international plan. And I was like trying to calculate, like, what time was it where we were in France versus what time was it in the States, in case it was a question that I needed a lawyer for. Like, I didn't know. And I was like, okay, like, what's your question? And he goes, I don't know, but to get started, I just want some money. I was like, oh my God, I hadn't even thought about the money. Like,
gosh, oh my gosh.
Yeah, no money. Like, I'd never taken a business class. I'd never, ballerinas, you don't care about money. Money isn't part of the equation. It's everything else. And I was like, oh my God. And I thought, okay, girl, fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. And I was like, money, of course. Like, what are you talking about? And he goes, oh, I don't know. Maybe 82,000. I was like, 82,000. Is that like euros or US dollars or like pigs or barrels of hay? Like, what are we talking? And he goes, I know, US dollars. Thank God. Because the exchange rates at that time, I couldn't have afforded $82,000. I had $86,000 in my savings account. That was all the money I'd ever saved in my entire life. I started earning money at 9 years old. I was now 24, 25 when we're signing this contract.
Wow.
And I don't have anything to fall back on. Like, my parents are wonderful humans, but there wasn't like a trust fund. There was no money. There's no money to like support. Right. And I was like, I've been poor before. When I moved to New York, I was cleaning apartments. Like, if this goes, I feel like I'm a worthwhile bet. I'll bet on myself every day. All right. So I wire from my 86,000, I wire him 82,000 US dollars. And let me tell you, of course, there was like a whole brand development thing that happened, not when I was standing there, but I pulled a lot of moments from my experiences with him to like come up with the name and come up with the colors and like all that stuff. But like when it came down to finances, I am forever grateful for all of our suppliers on cork, on glass, on capsules, on labels. Like they all gave me 90-day terms, and I begged them in that startup to like give me 90-day terms from either the moment it landed at my distillery, or if that was too late for them, like the moment it left their facility. So not from the moment I gave them a PO, or not from the moment they started working on the thing. Because what that did is it gave me like I didn't have the money to pay these invoices. It was a super fucking gamble, right?
Oh God.
And I'm going out like tens of thousands of dollars because some of these things are like minimum order quantities, 30,000 pieces. And that's a lot. Like I'm like buying physical inventory of these things. And so I had 90-day terms, and I was like thinking, okay, if everything hits, I go on the bottling line. If it takes like, a week or so to kind of get everything bottled and packaged and put on pallets and get the truck there, then it comes across the Atlantic Ocean. So it'll assume it takes like 4 weeks for it to, it took like 4 weeks for all the raw materials in France to assemble. Then it took 4 weeks for it to be like made and come across and get through customs. And then I was like, if I don't deliver bottles on October 1st, 2012, which was the very first day all my goods released from customs, I was like, I needed to deliver goods that exact day, because in New York State, accounts had exactly 30 days to pay their bills. And I couldn't start selling on the 1st. I had to drop cases on account. So I had to pre-sale for 2 weeks before I had one bottle of sample to do this, right? I had one stinking bottle that I could walk around to.
I'm stressed out for you right now.
It was crazy.
When are you going to have a Netflix series? You need one. Your story needs to be told. This is crazy. You have no money. You have one bottle. Money. What the actual fuck, Allison?
I know. What? I'm sweating too. Like I'm like reliving it.
Now you're freaking me out.
It was so crazy because literally like October 31st, all my POs are due. Like all of them, right? Like tens of thousands of dollars. But I had successfully been able to sell enough bottles and had enough of a profit margin that when all those accounts paid, I immediately wired that money out to all my vendors. I was never a day late on my vendors.
What a gamble.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
And then the hurricane came, right? It was Hurricane Sandy. I was living in Lower Manhattan in the West Village in my like 5th floor walk up. And the hurricane came and like all my accounts were in the West Village because that was who I could deliver to. I was my own distributor. And because none of the big guys wanted to work with me back then. So I had been delivering everything via bicycle. And so all these accounts just like loaded in Brenne. And like the second, I can't remember exactly, I think it was like November 2nd or something like that. This hurricane came through. Everyone lost power. All these people from upper part of Manhattan, like anything above 34th, they still had power. They all flooded the downtown to support the restaurants. And the restaurants were like, we're just serving everything via candlelight. The menus are thrown out because we can't get supplies. We have no refrigeration, right? So we're just making whatever we can. And all of these, like, I had like 40 accounts. They all had like amazing bartenders who would all just fall in love with like my brand, thank goodness. And they are all talking about Brenne every single night. They're pouring it out for people. I am like physically walking cases to restock people. And then what happened was all these people who had like come down to Lower Manhattan and wanted to support Lower Manhattan restaurants and all these things, they were like all went uptown and they were like, hey, where's this Brenne whiskey? So I started getting calls from like accounts, and Tony Kornheiser was on he's very famous, right? So he starts talking about me on his shows, on his podcast, on his radio, on television. I didn't even have power, so I didn't even know. And like all these people just so super rallied around Brenne that we started selling product October 1st, 2012. And by the time I closed my books on the calendar year, December that year, I'd already made back all my money.
Oh, I love this story. Yay, you. Oh my God. A round of applause. Brava, brava. Wow.
It was crazy.
I was really stressed out with you for a moment. Of course, I know that you're successful. You've won the Icon of Whiskey Award 4 times since then. But oh my God, what a beautiful start. You know why it's so beautiful? Because we talked about that grit and you had to do it. And you know what that tells me and listeners, I wanted to speak to you, is that Allison cares about her product. She really cares about Brenne. For her, it was really important that people tried it and became part of her story.
Thank you. You're going to make me cry. That's really nice.
But it's the truth. It's beautiful.
Thanks.
It's beautiful. And so, you became popular, right?
And enough
I'm not to sing the Wicked song, but I want to. Not good. But, it became popular. And so, but we need to talk, what's the significance of the word Brenne to you?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So I love your description of the French that you speak, Bridget, the kitchen French.
Yeah, it's just a little bit, but it goes a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I say my French is like, I'm very meditative when I speak in French because I can't talk passé composé or future tense. I can only speak present tense. And it's like, I can order food, I can buy clothes, and I can talk about whiskey. So that's it. But back then I didn't, again, like this is like early 2000s. I think the iPhone came out in 2007. Like if you remember, I mean, even when the early iPhone came out, there was no maps on it. Like, right. We used to get around by like MapQuest or like going onto a website and like putting in your destination and then printing out the papers.
Yes. We were pirates.
We were pirates.
Holding an actual map in our hands. Yes.
And the big deal was when it went from like a map that you had to buy and track to when you could print out step-by-step directions, but you still had to follow it. Right? So anyhow, so back in those days, in those archaic dinosaur pirate days, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to France and I'm going to be talking about whiskey. And I didn't know, I had like 7th grade French, but even that wasn't good because I opted to do, never mind. There was a whole long tangent about how I taught myself sign language instead of French that year. And then I got in trouble for it. And it was very funny, but I actually didn't get to learn French. So I was like, so I've got like 7th grade French kind of. And so I'd Google all these terms in whiskey. I'd printed them out. I'd put them into my pocket. And then I was trying to use the words that I had Googled. And again, like Google wasn't what Google is today. It was kind of like basic and simple. And like, maybe it was right, maybe it wasn't, but translation was really not strong. So I had hoped that the French, it had translated these English words around the process of distillation to were somewhat correct. Half of them probably are definitely not, but I had this one word and it was, I'd had all these men in France just keep giving me no's, right? And like had shut the door. And I kind of told you in those early moments with my then soon to be distiller, but I didn't know if he would be my distiller. I was so worried about getting another rejection. And if I did, I really felt like it was the end of the opportunity road for this dream. So I was like, well, we're talking about it, Bridget. We need more women in whiskey. But back then, man, there really weren't any. And I thought, I just got to use my gifts, and all the men use what they have. And so I got to use what I have. And I thought, well, the next thing that this man, I'm going to reduce men very simply here. And I'm so sorry, guys. I definitely don't mean to remind you, I was 24 years old and I didn't know how to date accurately. I just thought the next thing that this man seems really excited about, I am going to compliment him and giggle and like touch his arm and just acknowledge the thing that he's excited about. And he happened to be extremely passionate about the organic barley. Like, I'm standing there in my cheap $10 heels from Payless in the farm field. And he's talking about the barley. And I look in my pocket for the word that I had found for the barley that we use to make whiskey. And I'd thought, I'm going to tell him how beautiful his barley is in his own language. And so I giggle and I laugh and I touch his arm as best as I could possibly flirt. And I'm sure it was a raging failure. And I tell him, Ton Brenne est très belle. Your barley is so, so pretty. It's not exactly how to say that.
Yeah.
But he was like, quoi? which means what in French? I was like, ton Brenne est très belle. Like, your barley's so pretty. And he goes, mais non, Allison, mais non. The word is brun. Brun. And that is the part of the barley plant that you use to make the whiskey. Wow. And it's spelled Brin. Mm-hmm. So we were laughing and I was like, brun is a very difficult word for non-native French speakers to say. It's very nasally. It's hard. Anyhow, so, and I was embarrassed, right? Because I had like definitely mispronounced it. My grammar was completely wrong and pronunciation. Anyhow, so I was home later and 2 weeks later I get a call from him and he's like, oh, Allison, I am driving through the fields today and the Petit Brenne is so cute. And he starts like saying like how cute the barley is, but he used the word that I used. So when it came to naming the brand, I was trying to think of like its roots, right? It's like rooted in the soil, in barley. It's rooted in story and you know, in authentic folklore in that moment, right? That moment of like really sincere and authentic, just trial by fire to try and get someone to say yes. And I was like, this is exactly where an American and a Frenchman came together. It's where the whiskey starts in the field. So Brenne, spelled Brenne, which felt like phonetic to how I was pronouncing it back then, became the name of the brand. And to me, it symbolically really has these two distinctions of our origin story.
It sure does. Can you talk about the taste of Brenne and the different bottles that you produce? What are the different marks that you produce?
Yeah, thanks. The original one, which as its SKU name, we call Estate Cask. But I think most people, when they talk about Brenne, they're talking about this one. It's blueberry muffin top, creme brulee, and bananas Foster. All day, every day, right? And what I love about this whiskey is you can say that, people smell it, they go, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I smell. And then they drink it and they go, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I taste. And so that I love giving people that experience. And I say Brenne Estate Cask is our poolside whiskey. It's really fun. It's really approachable. It's great in cocktails. Even though it's 40% ABV, it holds up because the flavors are so bold. They're really, really intense flavors. They're not on the intense spectrum of like the smoky peated stuff, but they're very, very intense in all of the high notes, the florals, the fruits, those vanilla creme brulee notes. So they stand up in cocktails, which is really fun. Where then I say Brenne 10 is my fireside whiskey. It's like, it may not be for everybody. We don't need it to be for everybody. It's very limited in our production. It's about 1,000 bottles whenever we do it. Only 4 barrels married together to make that vintage. And it's dark chocolate and dried almonds and trail mix and baking spice. And I say that I want to sit, instead of a poolside whiskey, I call it the fireside whiskey, because I want to sit on like a beautiful cognac colored leather Chesterfield couch. And I want to upgrade my French bulldog to like a proper hunting dog, you know, and I want to maybe light up a cigar and just have a deep conversation with a good friend. And I feel like those two expressions, right? One is like, bring it to a house party, drop it on the Thanksgiving table. Like, hopefully no one's offended. Everyone has a good time with Estate Cask. And Brenne 10 is like, oof, that's my wind down. That's my quiet time. That's my slow sipper. It's just really beautiful. And then you can probably see behind me, I've got this gold one, which is it's a one-time thing we did as a France exclusive. And it's a triple cask. So all of my whiskeys, the Estate Cask and the 10 are aged in new French oak and wet or dried XO cognac barrels, depending on which expression. And then the gold one is, so Estate Cask is between 6 and 8 years old. Brenne 10 starts at 10 years old, and we can have some older whiskeys in those as well. And then I took 6-year-old Brenne Estate Cask. So that would be aged in new French oak and some whiskeys aged in wet XO cognac. And then I put them for the 2 years of COVID into 2 different Pinot de Charente barrels. And so it got another 2-year aging. So it's a total of 8 years, 3 different barrels. And it's unbelievable. It's like butterscotch and cherry and like butter. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Oh, it sounds absolutely delicious. Oh my goodness. And there's a reason why you keep winning, for the icon of whiskey. It's beautiful. You won this year, right? 2025 as well. I mean, in the past and all the way to this year, you are on people's minds, right? Your whiskey is something incredibly, incredibly special. What is next for you, Allison?
I'm so glad you asked. I can't talk about it quite yet. Maybe before this airs.
I want to have you back.
Yeah, please. Yes. I am working. I'm so excited because this next thing that I'm building is with a very good friend of mine, and it'll be the first time I'm building a company, hopefully of this magnitude, with a business partner, so not solo. And I think it's really interesting to go through these early stages, the naming, the development, the sourcing of ingredients and materials, and finding all of your different collaborators that you're going to need, your suppliers and everything like that. It's so different to go through this with a partner.
I bet, because you have been on your own from literally pulling money and I can't like, from your savings account difference.
I'm going to do that again.
On your little bicycle, delivering this stuff. So is it fun to have like some, having somebody to collaborate with?
Yes. It's like in ballet. It's like being in the dance studio where you have the choreographer, but when you have a choreographer and then you set it on the dancers and you see how your vision sets on others, you make tweaks and then you see someone else interpret your vision and you go, oh, that's even better, right? It's just even better. Yeah. So that's been this experience of I didn't realize just how quickly we could move when there's two of us who are in sync. That's really surprised me. You can't get stuck in your head debating the choice of something when you have a business partner and you tell them, I'll handle that tomorrow. It's wow, you really got to be in action. You really got to be accountable because I want to show up to her as she shows up to me. And then also all the collaborative stuff is really fun. But, on the moments where we get stuck and we're kind of twitchy about things and we keep running up against walls, we've been really delicate and gentle with each other to kind of hold up the mirror and say to the other person, this seems a little hard for you right now, or this seems hard for us. Why don't we take a break? Why don't we step away? Why don't we go spend time with our husbands? And I'll just talk to you tomorrow. And by having someone, it's the mental health is also so much better already, just at the start, at the onset. So while I can't tell you what we're doing quite yet, I'm really excited because I feel like the approach is such a healthier approach. I feel like we're in a flow state in a really elegant and respectful way that is sparking a lot more creativity. And the collaboration is something I didn't realize just how badly I've been missing. So I'm having a really good time with it.
Oh, I'm so happy that you are. And I do hope that she'll come back on Served Up and give us an update when you're ready to. Really, because we're big fans over here at Served Up and we'll be cheering you, just along the way. Because what you're doing, you're, of course, this delicious work that you're doing, but you're opening up the doors to make the space so much more diverse than it currently is. So by doing what you're doing with your passion, you're helping a lot of folks who may be even listening today, thinking about, I would love to jump into a space where there might not be a lot of folks that look like me, but heck, Allison did it, so I can do it too.
You guys can definitely do it.
Yes, yes. I want to thank you so much for coming on Served Up. And I want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace. And I do hope that she'll come back.
Thank you. I would be honored to. I'll make it my first stop. Let's do it.
Cheers to you and cheers to Brenne and to your bright future.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.